All right, everyone, it's 1:16, and we are going to go back into session after having a brief recess. I'm pleased to say that Don Conway is in the control room with Greenwich Community Television, and thanks to both Don and Horst Tebbe, who does the editing, and so this meeting will be available, it should be available live now, and it will be available for later viewing on YouTube. With that, I'd like to introduce James Waters, the Chair of the Old Greenwich Building Committee. I also see Jackie Welsh, the Vice Chair of the Building Committee, Dr. Tony Jones, the School Superintendent, Dan Watson, the Director of Facilities, and a team from the owner's representative, construction manager, and I know the architects are on the Zoom. So I'll let you introduce the team, if you don't mind. But before we do that, Harry, could you make a motion to take up the item?
Yeah, I would like to move BOE 5 so it can be discussed in front of us.
Seconded. Beat you, Doug.
Excellent. Okay, James.
Okay, good afternoon. Thanks for having us here today. So just to quickly make sure you have all the names for the record. So my name is James Waters. I'm the chairman of the Old Greenwich School Building Committee. And next to me, we have Jeff Anderson from Downs Construction Company, Anthony DeMoro from Downs Construction Company. Downs is our construction manager for this project. And then we also have at the table Lawrence Rosati from Morganti, who is our owner's rep for the project. And then, yes, we do have Jackie Welsh, the vice chair of the building committee, in attendance, who will help correct anything I misstate. Thank you for having us.
And do you want to introduce those on Zoom?
Oh,
The architect?
yes, I should as well, sorry. So we have on Zoom, we have David Stein, who is from Silver Petroselli, is the architect for the project. And we also have Ryan Patrick, who is a representative, an estimator from Downs Construction Company as well.
And Leo, is it possible to get the package up on the screen? I think it would just be easier for everyone to follow along.
All right, so thanks for convening this meeting, and as I think some of you, I know several of you have attended a bunch of our meetings lately, and as we kind of walked through the guaranteed maximum price that Downs has delivered to the building committee. So a few things before we get into it. I wanted to just highlight, we have completed the pre-construction process for the renovation of Old Greenwich School. I think a lot of you will know that this is a sort of long-running project. It has been in the town's plan since 2018, when the facility master plan was completed. And the Board of Ed determined that this was one of its top capital priorities, deciding on approving ed specs in 2021. Our building committee was convened in October 2022 by the first selectman, and we've been working ever since. Where we are now is the project has been taken out to bid. We have qualified bids in hand for all aspects of the project, and what that is showing is that we are approximately $6.3 million short of the funds that would be required to sign the guaranteed maximum price and to start construction. We are planning to start construction on the beginning of April, during the April break. I think a lot of you know this is a phased occupied renovation, so we will have portions of the school undergoing renovation while other portions of the school the rest of the school is operating per normal. We have a lot of detail. There's a lot of detail behind that. There's been a lot of work behind that. Happy to go into all of that. One of the things I think overall, just on this slide, what I think this interim addresses is some of the rising construction costs, things that we've seen in the environment, both in terms of pricing, but also sort of things we did not foresee when we completed our construction documents estimate in November 2024, like things like tariffs, et cetera. That's why we're here before you. The Board of Ed has considered this, as you all know. Let's go on to the next slide. So sorry, you can go back one on the screen there. So that's just a bit of an eye chart just to show you all the different stuff. It's worth highlighting one big point here is we are through the state's approval process. That we will need to go back once we can sign the guaranteed maximum price, to just reconfirm everything that they have approved in our pre-bid conformance review. That was done about a year ago. But we do have some things left to do. Notably, we have to finalize our building permit. We are, we believe, one item short of our building permit, and that is ongoing review from the town fire marshal. There is this interim appropriation, and those are the only two remaining items prior to starting construction. I will flag that the project has saved just shy of $250,000 on our pre-construction process versus what I briefed to the BET about almost 3 years ago. We did spend a little bit more than I had anticipated as recently as six months ago, because we did have to bring this project out to bid multiple times. As some of you will know, we brought it out to bid last spring. I can go into some detail on why we kind of decided not to see that bidding process through, and then we brought it out to bid again this October. Let's go on to the next slide. So this slide 3 here is a kind of summary. You will note that we have flagged 2 different scenarios here. The scenario in the middle, the scenario called Scenario 1 with the 7% owner contingency, that walks through all the details. Happy for any questions on any of that. The Scenario 2 that is on the column on the right, that would be if you wanted to have a slightly more robust owner contingency. I should note that this morning the building committee did discuss this exact thing, and we had not, when the Board of Ed met last week, we had not, really robustly discussed that as a building committee. I think this morning we went through some of the different alternates and the decisions that we made, as well as the owner contingency, and the building committee voted 6-0-1 this morning for something on the column, the Scenario 2 that's listed before you. I think a couple other things I would highlight. Just quickly, the top row, the early electrical package, that is already approved, on order, funded. The guaranteed maximum price, the 45,127,908, that is the GMP we've received from Downs. The soft costs, there's a slide that goes into that in a bit of depth. The owner contingency, the 3198 number, that is also a future slide. So far, going under source of funds, the town has approved $47,051,000 for the project. There's a portion of this that is has a BET condition that I know is on your agenda as well. And I do want to flag that that 565,495 early electrical package was funded after coordinating with the Board of Education and using some of the OGS specific capital funds to pay for that line item. So it is not coming out of the 47051. And the other thing I would just highlight I know you guys are tracking, but for the public's benefit, is there is $1,706,600 of OGS specific capital that is available. And I know there's been some discussion about what the right way is to handle that. So,
James, maybe I'll just stop you right there.
Yeah.
Let you get a sip of water. Joan, do you want to just touch on that? Because I think that's been asked and answered and resolved. So let's just get that out there, what the plan is for that 1.7.
So the 1.706,600 is made up of 7 old projects, and Ben Branyan has committed in writing that if and when this approval happens, those projects will be closed out. So the remaining balances, which is the 1.7 million, will be returned to the bond fund. Actually, one of them is Z Fund, but they will be closed out.
Does anyone have any questions on that? Because I know that came up earlier. Okay, excellent.
Okay, so going to the next slide. Actually, sorry, go back one real quick. I just want to highlight one thing. You will see, just to point this out, on the bottom left, you'll see the building committee's recommendations on some of the alternates in the project. There's a slide that goes over that, just flagging that because that is baked into the numbers here. And the second one is I think some of you are aware that the fire marshal is asking us to incorporate a fire pump into the design documents, and so we have a placeholder for that. I think I think there's some improvement possible and some room for improvement in our processes in the town. This has happened a couple times now, but I'm at least glad that while we're having a money conversation, we have some placeholder for that. So, okay, next slide. And this one I'm going to turn over to Downs. It's a little bit hard to read the detail unless you zoom in. And but Jeff, why don't you take a stab?
Sure, thanks, James. So what you're looking at is one component of the overall Exhibit A GMP amendment to our pre-existing contract with the town of Greenwich. This is what's called the general summary, and really, in layman's terms, the meat and potatoes of the number in terms of what we're going to do to guarantee the renovation of Old Greenwich School. It's a culmination of the bid process that we recently undertook, a detailed scope review process with all of the low bidders to ensure that the bid results are in compliance with the bid documents, the schedule, and everything we need to do to properly phase this project. We've carried allowances for areas that we feel from our experience are required to be established to ensure that we can properly guarantee and manage the project and this GMP, at the same time ensuring that erroneous money is not carried by trade contractors to inflate their numbers. It gives us that opportunity to properly manage it when these allowances are established. We have the alternates that were recommended by the building committee, which we'll talk about probably in more detail. And then as we head towards the bottom of this general summary, we're looking at what are called the indirect costs. So the cost for us to properly manage, have on-site supervision, to oversee the trade contractors and certainly coordinate with the principal and other Greenwich authorities having jurisdiction, associated insurance, bonds, and fees, for a total of $45,127,000.
Okay, let's keep going, and we can
Actually,
circle.
let me just pause, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, I want this to be interactive, so
Yeah, okay.
there's a lot of information here, and I wonder if anyone has any questions on specific line items. Doug?
I just had a couple, just framing this against the October 2020 or 24 construction estimate. You had some large cost variances versus that estimate, site work, drywall, flooring, et cetera, masonry. Just what additional color can you provide on why these specific line items were meaningfully above your prior estimates?
Yeah, sure. A couple things. James had alluded to in his opening, market conditions. Market conditions is a couple different areas. One is escalation, the influence potentially on tariffs for the mechanical, electrical, plumbing trades. Market conditions also in terms of the locale of the project. The trade contractors that support a school renovation project, school new building project, are the same throughout the state of Connecticut. As an example, there's not a pool of contractors in New York, for instance, that might be a little bit closer to Greenwich, that can come over the border to price these jobs. There's a factor associated with a long schedule, phased occupied renovation, and the participation that may occur, which is going back potentially to the initial bid process where we didn't have as much participation as we'd like. We've improved that significantly the second time around. Depends on what projects are out to bid at the same time on the interest for a job like this versus there's a lot of comparison, of course, to the Central Middle School project in a brand-new building. I use the word attractiveness loosely in terms of a contractor looking at a job saying, I've got a brand-new building coming out of the ground versus a phased occupied renovation. Those are influencing the numbers. And also, even though we've rebid the job a year later, we have to factor in that there's escalation over that year. But we're happy to report that, again, more participation and numbers that were close to what we had the previous cycle.
Thank you for that. But just to follow on, I appreciate, some elements, tariffs, whatever, are new, but phased renovation was part of the plan back in October. Just if you can kind of disconnect to the degree you kind of understand, it's hard to quantify, but just, it would just, some of the factors you mentioned were things that would have been known a year ago, correct?
Right, so the only thing that I could say to that is that we don't have, I use the term loosely, crystal ball in terms of what jobs are out to bid, what we're competing against in terms of your job here at Old Greenwich School to other jobs throughout the state or directly in the area, Stanford, Norwalk, so on and so forth. So we use historical data to put together our October 24 estimate. That was also reconciled with another third-party estimator. So the data told us at that time, regardless of the location and market conditions, that should be a budget that we could move forward with and recommend. So for the reasons I've outlined, the data wasn't there, but now we have the data, and there's been a lot of other influencing factors that certainly, contribute to the number as you see it today.
Great, thank you. And then just one other question. You made some mention of it in your remarks, but just if you could give a bit more color on the staffing model. Has the project changed, if at all, since 24, just referencing the introduction of the offsite supervision allowance 4 and allowance 5?
Sure. The only change really is in terms of, obviously, the dates that we're starting and finishing a few years later. In some cases, we also have additional duration. And that additional duration sort of leads to partially the answer to your question. We have worked closely with the building committee, with the principal of the school to develop a phasing plan. That couldn't occur until we were on board and able to really come up with a plan that worked to make sure that our approach was a school with a construction project versus a construction project with a school. So everything we've done is try to make sure that we're maintaining occupancy, maintaining safety, maintaining program. So, what we're trying to do is not carry at that initial stage of the job or the RFP that we responded to, monies that, would just be added to inflate the project at the time. So we've gone through a planning process now that says, here's the phasing, and the phasing is going to dictate this additional premium time, but it's allowing us to manage that on our side of the GMP versus asking contractors to just carry all the premium time in their number, thus inflating the number.
Understood, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Jeff. Go ahead, Joe.
Thank you. Just remind me, I'm sure it's in the numbers, but remind me, you bid this job a year ago, and then you bid it again recently?
That's correct.
What was the escalation percentage?
For about a year, we've been putting 4.5%.
You automatically put that on, or recalculating this specific job?
When we're forecasting a delay of a year on a job, we're still using 4.5%.
And that's above inflation? Why are we above inflation on such an escalation?
Looking at historical data, looking at engineering news record calculations, and that's what we come up with as a typical escalation number for construction.
So you're saying like projects escalate further than inflation does?
That's correct, yeah.
Thank you.
But just to reiterate the point, you're very happy with the amount of participation that you got from the second go-round and the first. So despite the passage of time and the escalation,
Very much so. I
The
mean,
right decision in your mind.
we obviously went into the second bid cycle with a renewed effort to ensure we didn't have the same problem twice, right? So we, not that we didn't do it in the first place, but we went above and beyond to make sure that we sold this project, and we did a even bigger effort this time to build the project on paper. As I like to say, the more attractive the job becomes, the more interest that you get in the job itself in getting bids. So I think that's reflective of the additional results. So in summary, yes, we're happy with the results that we have for participation.
Great. Any other questions on the specific bid line items? No. Okay, let's move on, James.
Okay. All right, so if we go down to the next slide, these are the alternates for the project. So when we were putting together the bid documents, we asked the team to create some alternates. You'll see there's a mix of add alternates and deduct alternates. This is ways that, depending on how the bid process went, things we could potentially add to the project or use to help, help on the cost side of the project. I'm not going to go into all these. We can discuss all these one line by line if you would like, but the ones I would point out to you in specific are numbers 3, 7, and 8. These, you'll see there a hard cost number that's associated with each alternate. That's as bid by the subcontractor. And so add alternate 3 is for sheet flooring. It adds, one of the key features of what we're doing with Old Greenwich School is the front entryway will go from being on the second floor of the building to on the ground floor of the building. So the ground floor of Old Greenwich School will become the new sort of place everybody first walks into the building rather than climbing a flight of stairs to get up there. And so this alternate, to make that happen, we want to make sure that the first floor of the building is as presentable as possible and as consistent as possible in things like flooring while we're doing flooring work. So that's the execution of that alternate. You'll see on alternate 7, that is a deduct alternate that refers to a specific roof section in the building. You'll see the number there, that is a $450,000 deduction. I think, if there are questions on this, I'm certainly happy to refer it, have our team weigh in on it. I think that the general summary is that this is a roof section that will need to get replaced at some point. I think the building committee, we discussed it this morning. I think people generally feel like, if there were no constraints in the world, we'd be happy to do this as part of the project. But I think in a project where, this project is about more than just roof replacements. This is about accessibility. This is about HVAC throughout the building. This is about fire protection throughout the building. And I think our general sense, based on our diligence to date, was that this section of the roof could wait to be replaced, as opposed to would be a core aspect of the project. And then alternate 8. Is we're adding, one of the things we're doing with adding these new HVAC systems is in discussing with Mr. Watson, he has asked that we add the ability to have some controls for the existing unit ventilators just as a backup to the new system that is being installed. And so we have, the building committee has endorsed it. All of the other 6 alternates, the building committee has rejected those. We have run these all by the Board of Ed. Questions that people would like to discuss on this?
Harry?
Yeah, I was told by Mr. Branyan last week that Mr. Watson was going to look at the roof again, and I see he's in the room. Can we direct a question to Mr. Watson as to whether he's comfortable with the roof strategy? And, maybe you come up to the mic. Sorry, Dan, to put you on the spot, but you're used to
I
me
think he
doing
was
that.
expecting the question, perhaps.
No, he was not expecting. He's got papers.
We're fine with what's been discussed. The roof is in need of replacement. It's right at its useful life, as best I can tell from poor drawing management on our part. That section of the roof, as best I can tell, was around 2007, so we're at 20 years. It's in need of replacement, and whether we do it or if it's part of the project, it should be done in the next couple of years.
that seems to be within the window of the project.
Yeah.
Okay,
question?
thank you.
Laura?
Joe?
Thank you. Dan, I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with the roof. Is it a slate roof?
No, the roof it's shingled
Asphalt.
roof.
Somebody told me it was slate. I'm like, slate, 20
No,
years? Okay,
the
asphalt.
roof that's
It's 20
being
years, yeah.
replaced as part of the project is a rubber roof, if I'm not mistaken, a flat roof. The roofs around it are shingled.
Right, which 20, 25 years is a normal life for such
We
equipment.
do tend to use better product for roofing. I don't know the product that was installed then. It may have a 30-year life expectancy, so, you know, just numbers-wise, we're due. Actually looking at it, you know, we could get another professional's opinion on it.
Right, so to Harry's point, there's a very good chance when we finish our project here, Old Greenwich, we're coming back for more money, for more improvements on the building. Harry, shall I pass that to you? I know you've led that discussion before.
Yeah, I think there've been discussions among a lot of us that, we don't want to come back doing separate projects within a 5 to 10 year window of when we finish this one. This seems to be the most likely. The other one is the Mullins, whatever,
Cornice.
Cornice. So, I think we just put it on the table here that, we're concerned about future capital needs, having just gone through a major renovation project. I understand that the roof would be still qualify for state reimbursement, but there's a cost associated with filing for state reimbursement, and on a $450,000 project, it becomes a little marginal. So I'm kind of at a crossroads here because I know it's been debated and we're not being asked for it, but yet I'm sort of trying to express the sentiment of some of us on the BET that really I suggest you rethink this.
So I would just like to add, I have a high degree of appreciation for the task before the building committee. There were ed specs that were approved and adopted, and the building committee has been working very judiciously over 3 years to accomplish the objective in those ed specs. And as the passage of, thank you, Dan, and through the passage of time, and, it's a 120-year-old building, there are apt to be many things that we discover. So hence, we're having a conversation about contingency, and we're having the conversation about these two ad alternates, the cornices for $164,500, as well as the roof for $450. And, I think you have a very specific charge. I think our focus, and there are a lot of BET members here, our focus is on the entire long-range capital plan and getting the true picture of what it costs to maintain an asset. And from a community perspective, if we're going to be doing a very extensive phase project, but in 2028, when we're all celebrating and doing the ribbon cutting, but there's still a lot of capital items that need to be complete, this is the time to think about that. And I'm not saying that's your job. I appreciate that you have fleshed out these issues. I understand there are reports saying the roof is in decent condition. It could last for 5 years or what have you. But when there are people on site, when it's a reimbursable expense, this is something I think we would appreciate. And I know the Board of Ed did have this discussion at their last meeting, and no action was taken. But I think it's coming up again because it is continuing to be, well, we're there, right? So do we need to address it? So I'm going to leave it at that and recognize Joe.
Thank you. Just a quick question. Dan, I would have said something about you walking away from the microphone. I did have a specific question of you, so you can answer it from there if you like. I don't want to trouble you to come all the way up here and talk on the microphone again. But I know, I'm just joking. I knew he would come up. Dan, tell me this. Now, of course, the building committee's done their charge and looking after the ed specs and creating this great opportunity. But is there any considerable savings to address this roof at the same time we're doing other construction, economies of scale? We have equipment there.
Without a doubt,
So it would be prudent.
absolutely.
All right, so we'd be silly.
We'd be silly, it would be another roof that the warranties line up with, or don't line up. If we wait till later, part of the roof's done, then we have to come back and there's another warranty involved.
So we don't want to be silly here, do we?
No.
Thank
we
you.
don't.
All right, good. All
could
right,
have
so we should do
answered
this.
that back there.
Thank you, you can, yes, thank you.
All right, Dan,
Thank you,
don't leave yet, because I'm going to ask you about the, sorry, I'm just going to move to add alternate, the cornices, add alternate 2. Do you have, and now, I was a little confused, I didn't drill down to the demolition note 6.06, but I heard on the Board of Ed meeting, there was concern, I think it was the architect who maybe said, once you start, there's 305 linear feet of cornices, once you start getting in there, that, you know, you don't know what you're getting into. Do you have any particular concern or recommendation or thought about that add alternate?
You know, we did not look into it closely when we were putting our budgets together because we didn't know what this project was going to entail. The last thing, when we looked at it, was it's not in great shape. There's some areas, I mean, it's directly, it's in the weather, but it's directly below the gutter system, you know, whether that plays into it or not. But the fact that the architect recognized it kind of leads us to believe, well, why did you put it in there if it wasn't an issue? So, I mean, just from talking to my people who have hands-on, there's some areas that need to be replaced, that are touchable, you can tell. As far as the extent, I don't know if it's 300, 400, 500 feet.
It's 305.
Again,
It's
it would be-
305.
Again, it would be prudent if the building is gonna have scaffold up anyway for other items. It might be a good idea to do it. You know, I hate to add fuel to the fire, but cost savings, I think it'd be prudent.
Do you want the architect to speak at all on this?
I do. Doug has a question of Dan, if you don't mind. You want to come back to the room? Yeah. Okay. Are there any other add alternates or other items, or are those the 2 that you are?
I mean, those are the only 2 that, you know, were brought up. I think the design is fantastic. I think the guys have really gone above and beyond pulling things out, adding things where it needs to be. So it's, you know, I think it's going to be a phenomenal add to the school. So.
Do you want me to, should we recognize David Stein on Zoom? Is that what you'd like to do, to speak?
If you'd like him to speak on some of the specifics of the alternates, or if anyone else, David's probably the right guy too. David? Do you want to speak to alternate 2 and alternate 7?
Yes, happy to do so. Is there any specific questions or just in general, here in the conversation, I could take each one. In terms of the roof, as Dan mentioned, the town did not have clear documentation to when that roof was generally replaced, but we have a fairly good sense just looking at it from surface value being up on that roof. There's no immediate signs of leakage or any other decay that we saw from below. Therefore, that's why this was placed as an alternate, but we can see that it's coming to a point of a sign of replacement, you know, in the future. So that's been sort of debated back and forth whether or not that should be done now or later. As I did mention, roof replacement projects are on a rolling basis, so those, anytime a school district needs to replace a roof and that it exceeds its 20-year lifespan of warranty, not deterioration, you can apply for a state grant and you then go through that process. So that could happen at any time, different than this alteration project that requires you to go through state bonding and apply only once a year, and, you know, is a long, arduous process. Roof replacements happen all year round. So with that, I do believe there's probably some efficiency, and the Downs Group could talk about it. It's already built in. If it was chosen, it would get inserted into the workflow, and you know, construction critical path would be adjusted accordingly to have that inserted. As far as the wood, was, as Dan said, what you could see is what we could see, and from there we did see some signs of decay based on the educational specs and so forth. You know, this is a maintenance item. This wasn't areas that we were specifically touching. If we were touching the adjacent roof, then we would have automatically tied in the gutters and tied in the fascia that goes along with it. Our concern is once you do open that up, there may be some other elements that then get tacked onto that, and we would just have to address that and provide our advice on how to repair any of those items or make any improvements associated with that. But at this point in time, we try not to open up things in its entirety. There could be some patching that's done, but once you do that in a public bid like this, we wanted to just quantify it as a whole, as opposed to targeted repairs that are typically considered more maintenance-related items.
Thank you, David. That's very helpful. Doug, you have a question?
So just to follow up on the roof, it was touched on a bit at the Board of Ed meeting, but maybe you can speak to us of why the building committee made the active decision to remove that element or that alternative.
Yeah, I mean, I think the building committee, we've heard about this roof roof section for some time. We know at some point it needs to be replaced. We know it's not the most in need of being replaced. I would say one thing I think is important to highlight, because we really haven't focused on that, is at least at this specific meeting, but everybody should be aware that this is an alteration. This is deemed an alteration project by the state. This is not an attempt to completely, thoroughly renovate Old Greenwich School. It never has been. And if it were, we'd be asking you for a lot more money. So will there be ongoing maintenance with this building? Absolutely. Beyond this project, absolutely. That is the very nature of this project as it was set up from the very start. Could you do additional things? Yes, you absolutely could. I mean, that's why we've designed it. It's, we listed it as an alternate. I think as the building committee discussed this morning, I think, there certainly is some appetite on the building committee to do some of these items. The reality is it would add, just those two specific alternates that we're talking about would add about $650,000 to the GMP. And I think in discussing with the building committee, I think everybody is a little bit wary of, tacking on this, tacking on that. That could potentially threaten the core aspect of what we were trying to do with this project. And so, totally understand the building committee is standing by and is going to execute on, whatever the final agreed upon scope is specific to these couple of items. But I think in our judgment, this is a way that we could potentially, it was a lever that we purposely built in to give us some flexibility when we received the GMP.
And just to clarify, these, you have 90 days to accept or reject these alternates, correct? It's not like we can wait and see how the contingency goes and then,
Yeah, no,
if we have the money, we can do it. We do
Right.
have to make a decision.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Harry? Okay, excellent.
Great minds think alike.
Well, we're thinking alike. All right, are we ready to move on to the next? Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so can we get that slide back up? And maybe go to slide 6. There we go. Okay, so this is a sort of summary of the soft costs for the project. The soft costs are outside of the GMP. Our owner's rep and Jackie and I have worked this list diligently for a couple of years. You will see that, broad brushstrokes, there's just describing the columns, you have, pre-construction costs, you have construction costs, and then, those add up to total costs. So on a pre-construction basis, the soft costs for this project are about $1.84 million. During construction, soft costs will be about $3.1 million. I should note that big chunks of those soft costs during the construction period are the work of our team, literally the people who are in this room or on Zoom right now, to make sure this is a successful project. It is the new playground that is built in. That is a big chunk. And then it's some of the kind of inspections and sort of things as we've gone down the road here, things that we know we're going to have to do. We're going to need a commissioning agent. We're going to need inspection services. We're going to need to do a gas line in the street reinforcing the main. These are things that you sort of learn as you develop, as a building committee developed. And I think you guys all know that when we started this project, we were basically at zero. We didn't have a comp for how to actually build this. We will certainly share this comp with the future Riverside Building Committee. So just a quick articulation of the soft cost. I will also highlight here that there is no massive FF&E, fixtures, furniture, and equipment for this project. You don't see a huge furniture line item, and that's because there is a $168,000 item, but that is for furniture for the new addition. The rest of the building will retain its current furniture. Okay. If we can go to the next slide, and I'm happy to scroll back and forth if there's further questions. This is a sort of laydown of the contingencies, just so you are aware. And the top section there is what the building committee endorsed on December 30th. And you'll see the bottom section is what the building committee had discussed this morning. I should note that there is per our contract with Downs, there is a built-in 3% contingency that they hold. However, the owner contingency is separate from that. The owner contingency right now that we have been discussing for a year plus with this project is 7% of the GMP. And that sort of in my lead-in earlier, the building committee discussed that again today, and I think endorsed, requesting a 10% owner contingency. One of the things that did come to our mind is something we've discussed for quite some time with the folks in town is that what is the appropriate level of owner contingency for a project like this? And I think everybody understands that you shouldn't have the same level of contingency for a new construction project versus a renovation project. And the general rule of thumb that I was told when we first got going about 3 years ago was that renovation projects, your owner contingency should be about twice what it is for a new construction. And I think you guys are aware that the Central Middle School Building Committee, which is a new build, has a 6% owner contingency. Any questions on owner contingency? Okay.
I'm sure there will be, but let's continue.
Yeah, that's fine. Let's keep going. Just get through it all. This is a basic bridge of what changed between December 2024 when we were last year and what resulted in the GMP. You can see some of the in red boxes. You can see some of the changes. There's some changes in soft costs. We'll go through some of these in a second, but these are sort of some of the differences in the both the hard costs, the GMP, the soft costs, and some of the contingency and offsets we were using. Go through those all in a sec. So, Downs, do you want to take this one? This next slide, go to the next one. You take that, Jeff?
Sure, yeah, I think it's in part just talking about my comments earlier in terms of how we got from point A to point B, talking about market conditions and the influence of some scope items, such as soil conditions and the fire pump being necessary for the job, influencing where we sit today in terms of a proposed GMP to where the original budget was.
On the soft costs, a similar thing. One thing I would note is you'll see the third line item there on the soft costs of construction manager pre-construction fees. This is really just a transfer from the hard costs into the soft costs. So that difference there, it's rough order of magnitude, same dollar amount that for Downs' work that they've been doing, but before we were classifying it in the hard costs, and now it's being classified in soft costs. Questions people might have on these?
Can I just ask about this, the soil? I don't think it's a big issue at this site, but can you just enlighten me what the cost is for?
There was determined that within the footprint of the new addition in the rear, that there is hazardous material that was not part of originally contemplated within the budget. So that's now within the bids, within the GMP to manage that soil.
Okay, and we're comfortable it's confined to that area?
We're comfortable to be confined with the areas that we are disturbing. So there is the addition, but there's also utility work, so on and so forth, both on the front of the building. So we're completely addressed with that. And we also have an additional allowance listed in the GMP to try to provide a little bit more management of that if it becomes an issue.
Thank you. Go ahead, Joe.
Hazardous material, I've run a number of projects, or been involved in a number of projects with Greenwich, and we keep running into hazardous materials. What kind of hazardous materials have we now discovered in Old Greenwich?
Well, there is polluted soil. Yeah, polluted soil.
Okay, which is not contaminated, it's polluted.
Right.
I learned a difference in that, right, Dan? We learned that with the
There is a
Cardinal
difference in
Stadium.
terminology, for sure.
So that means some people have thrown an old washing machine in the ground or something like that, and they kind of dug it up, and is that what we're talking?
I don't know about washing machine, but if you could imagine that when these original buildings were built, there was less rules with soil being brought in for backfill. Could have been brought from an area that was polluted. But we've got analytical results from a professional hygienist that shows the scientific contents of it. But there's specific areas where this can be transported and disposed of. But it can't be reused on site only because of the constraints of what we're talking about in terms of this project. There's not an area to lose this material.
So in the degree of bad soil, is bad, say the worst soil's up here, the good soil's down there, kind of like in the middle somewhere in this one?
Well, I purposely say polluted versus contaminated.
Thank you.
There's a significant difference between the two.
Yes. Right,
This-
thank you.
This is nothing like we have at Greenwich High School.
I would
so.
really could talk about that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So this is essentially just the cost to transport it to a site that's approved for polluted soils?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Keep going. Okay. Let's go to the next slide if we could. All right, this is the aforementioned OGS-specific capital funding. And just highlighting, I do want to highlight the building committee, we have been in discussion with the school district about this. There is a difference about, in my earlier slide, 2 slides earlier, we were planning to use a number of those, of these line items to offset our ask in our construction document budget. Now, the only amount that we're using is the amount that we used for the early electrical order. So, and that's highlighted in that red box, the 565,495.
And there was a little bit for a sewer.
Sewer, to investigate the sewer stuff. Yeah.
Thank you. Go ahead, Doug.
And this might be for Dan, as was discussed earlier, these will get closed out at the point that this gets added to the scope of project. For these 7 projects, when they were laid out and approved previously, will all of the goals of those projects have been addressed by this renovation? Sorry to give you exercise.
That's fine. It's a bit of a loaded question, because when the CIP sheets are presented, there may be a variety of projects that fall under, let's just say, plumbing and electrical. They may be under 6 different schools. And we were able to move funding between schools. So I don't have an exact recollection of what the dollar amount was pertaining to this school, but we've gone through it. Anything that we had planned to do capital-wise has been completed, or it will be completed under the scope of the project. So we're confident with the dollars, I don't want to say being given back, but being repurposed for the school.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. All right, if we go to the next slide, just a different way of looking at the timeline, just hearkening back to where we had before. And then if we go to the final slide, it's just a summary. So, look, I think we're standing by for questions that you guys may have. I know we are going to be working with the Board of Ed, per the motion that the building committee made this morning on the owner contingency, and we're standing by. I know the moderator of the RTM is standing by to convene a special meeting of the RTM at the beginning of February.
I think now would be a good time for you to review the motion and the discussion at the building committee this morning.
Sure. Yeah. So this morning we.
And maybe we go back to which slide should we go back to refer to? 3?
Yeah, let's go to slide 3. That's probably the right one. So this morning, I purposely, in advance of this conversation, I wanted to make sure that we had the opportunity to kind of to hash it out on the owner contingency on the roof and the cornice alternates. And, I think, look, everybody on this building committee has been working really hard, I think, on all aspects of this project all along. We also recognize that, I would say we've tried to be very, very careful on kind of scope and making sure that we are being prudent stewards of the town resources. And I think this morning I wanted people to sort of, based on some of the discussions, hash out between them what are the, if there's sort of 3 areas where the building committee feels like what we're recommending here may fall a bit short. I would, sort of highlight those as 3 areas. 1 is the contingency. 2 is the roof, the roof alternate, and 3rd is the cornices. And, in a perfect world, I think the building committee would love to do, love and be happy to do all 3. I think, as the representatives of the project and overseeing it going forward, I think when we hash this out, I think the motion that we garnered support for was as follows: the building committee is in favor of a 10% owner contingency and would prioritize that over the roof and cornice alternates. That was the exact wording that was discussed with the building committee this morning. And I know there, people may have different views about which ones they would prioritize, but that's the building committee's sense, having lived with this project for the last 3 years.
And just to expand on that, and Harry and I, just for full disclosure, we were both on the call this morning, so we had the benefit of listening to the discussion, which I think was helpful. But the new information that you presented was, the owner's contingency at Central Middle School at 6% for a new build. And I know Ms. Welsh had a comment about this is a phased occupied building and everything really needs to move like clockwork. So if you're talking about contingency, if there's any delays in the schedule, that has a ripple effect. I forget the words you used, cascading something effect, something dramatic.
Yeah. Do you want to say it yourself or no? Yeah, look, so one of the things, so we're aiming to get started in April. Get construction fences up while everybody's on April break. Start the sequencing of work, which Downs can, helped us create, is this phasing plan that the building department has weighed in, everybody's weighed in on, is, we're going to start by doing some of the work to excavate where the new addition will be. That's, you guys will recall, that's around the blacktop in the back and where the playground is. And we're also going to, move out on the new playground. Then, this is going to continue for 32 months, right? And there are going to be periods of where there will be a huge amount of activity that will likely be in the summers. And there will be periods of where you're like, oh man, that's all they're doing right now, because that will be during the school year, right? And so with a phased occupied renovation, we are taking great care to do significant amounts of work while there are no kids in school, and to do things that will not be disturbing to the learning environment or certainly to safety while kids are in the building. So for all of these different 6 phases of construction to work and to work seamlessly, we've got to stay on track, right? And so I think the general sense of the building committee is, the $3 million number there, we recognize that is, a meaningful owner contingency. And the question is, will there be unknowns that are going to come up? And the answer to that is absolutely yes. And, I think our top priority is to do this project, to do it right, and to keep everybody safe and, keep it on time, on budget. And I think the sense of the building committee was, a slightly more robust owner contingency here may actually help us do exactly that.
I think it's very helpful to have that guidance from the building committee, so thank you for taking it up and for doing a vote this morning. Do we have questions? Joe?
About the contingency, but let me begin by, James, I've watched you do this presentation about 35 times. How many times do you feel you've done this presentation? I'm just kidding, you don't have to answer that question. The owner's contingency, I have done in the private sector, certainly many projects, and the owner's contingency is my bank account. So I know how well and hard I protect my bank account and make sure the subcontractors or the contractors working for me don't get any more of my money. I want them to do their job and get paid fairly, but I don't want them knowing that they can go to my bank account and withdraw money anytime they want. A larger owner contingency, to me, seems like you're showing the contractors your bank account and saying, please, come in my bank account. Now, I guess I'll ask your owner's rep a little bit on this one, too. Basically, if we increase the owner's contingency, does that expose us to possibly the contractors looking to expand the scope of their work by choice? And because I know that working on the Central Middle School Building Committee, and Harry, we work closely on that one together, we're constantly fighting off and protecting our contingencies and keeping the paws back from going at our money. What is your views on that?
So Lawrence Rossetti from Morganti.
Thank you. My answer to that would be you have a construction manager along with an owner's rep.
Bring it closer, yeah.
My answer to that would be you have a construction manager and an owner's reps that is here to serve the building committee. We're here to thoroughly review any changes that come up, along with the architect, to vet each change issue, to review it and ensure it's valid, that it is a extra to the contract, and if it's not, it's going to be rejected, and the contractors will be told to follow the terms of the contract. So as with any change, everyone's going to be reviewed for proper due diligence, making sure the time and/or monies asked for is fair and valid before it's presented to the committee.
Thank you for that. But is a larger sum of money sitting there looking to possibly be allocated to the project a slight or any degree of enticement to the people that are working for you and the building committee to possibly aspire to have a portion, if not all of that? Yeah, James, that's probably on.
Yeah, I mean, look, the one thing I would just say is, anybody who's watched this building committee at work, and certainly anybody who's negotiated with me, knows that you're not, just because you ask for more money does not mean you're getting it. And this building is I would say pretty frugal. And I think we do have a good team. We do challenge, when it comes to things, certainly with funds that we have been allocated and that we have had at our discretion. We're not exactly opening the pocketbooks to anybody who asks. And, I think there, as Lawrence said, and I know Downs would concur, there's going to be a very rigorous change order process that, this building committee will not be rubber stamping. I take your point. Larger pot. However, I think the question back at all of us, frankly, is, is it prudent to have the exact same percent of owner contingency for new construction versus renovations? Because I do think that is a fair topic for decision makers.
James, that's a great answer. Thank you for that.
Yep.
Satisfies me.
Okay.
Okay, I think I'm going to pause here. We have an item before us for an interim of $6,277,940. And I think as the four of us, we've had a few discussions. I think we have a direction we want to go in. But because we have so many BET members here, and I appreciate all of you attending, there are some on Zoom who couldn't be here in person. We're really trying to be efficient with your team, get all the information and questions out on the table. So I'd like to open it up. Perhaps I'll start with Stephen, who is the BET building representative on the Old Greenwich Building Committee, which, by the way, everyone, meets at 7 o'clock on Tuesday mornings, generally for an hour, but during the holidays, they worked many more hours going through all these line items. So we all owe them a debt of gratitude, as we do with all of our building committees. But I think for specific questions on line items, on the contract, not so much contingency, but I think it would be useful to get people's thoughts. So Stephen, do you want to start us off?
Yes, thank you, Laura, for the opportunity. The building committee, as James has said, has worked consistently for the last 3.5 years to hew as closely to the ed specs as possible. And that's really what drove the proposal that came in front of us. My own view, and I said it this morning as well, is that if there was a single change I would make to the proposal that's before you, it would be to add the contingency. Not because, as Joe suggested, we want to put more money in front of the contractors, but because this is a 120-year-old building. It is a phased reconstruction, and there's a measure of risk in this sort of renovation that is simply outside of our control. I certainly respect my colleagues who think that the cornice could be repaired as well, or that the roof could be repaired. And if it's this board's judgment that those should be done at this time, I understand the arguments about the efficiency of doing it once and not coming back to the board for what I'll call incremental amounts of capital. But still, I'm in the same place, which is, while I would certainly defer to the board on the balance of the issues, the one thing that I would strongly recommend that our board consider as a whole is the addition of the contingency, not, as I say, as a blank check, but to protect against disruption in the schedule. I mean, this project has been, James began his presentation roughly an hour ago by saying that this was on the 2018 master plan. It's now the 4th year that parts of it are in front of the BET, and we've already suffered a delay for 1 year. I want to do everything within my power, and I would hope my colleagues would feel the same, to make sure that we finish this project timely. And to me, though, that argues in front of for the contingency. So thank you.
Leah, let me know if anyone on Zoom has their hand raised and wishes to speak. No? Okay. Elliot?
Thank you. I have a question. It's a hypothetical question, and I'm not sure I even would vote for this, but would it be possible to bifurcate the costs for doing this project as we have it outlined right now, and then approving separately additions to the project, whether it be the roof we may want to approve right now, but I guess my concern is, as has been expressed by many of you, that perhaps we're not looking as thoroughly at doing other work that should be done now, whatever those projects are, whether they be the ones that James has outlined in his presentation or other things. You know, has a thermal engineer looked at the envelope of the structure? Are there opportunities, has a blower door test been done? What are the windows like in, whether they be in poor repair on the one hand or just not thermally efficient on the other. So, but I want to be respectful to Stephen's point, which he just articulated, and I agree with, is we don't want to do anything to slow this down. So my question, in a long-winded way, is can we do both? Can we look at opportunities to address issues that common sense would tell you to address now, and not hold back the, the thrust of the project.
Thank you. I think we're going to be discussing how to proceed. Are there any other questions from the side? I don't see any hands raised on Zoom. David?
It was said by somebody that the state reimbursement is only available when the warranty period is lapsed of 20 years. And would that have any impact on the roof issue insofar as I think Dan said that the roof was originally constructed in 2007?
Ryan, now it's probably, you're probably the most credible voice on this, but my understanding is that this particular roof section would be eligible for reimbursement, and we've confirmed that. Is that correct, Ryan?
Yes, based on the dates that were provided, yeah, it would fall under reimbursement.
Thanks.
Matt?
I'm also the liaison for EMAC for the BET, so this came up in our recent EMAC meeting that we had this week. So I want to just raise it to the building committee, which is that if it is decided and ultimately agreed to that the roof should be replaced, I'd want to just understand more clearly what, if any, process should be put in place to look at solar. That's something that we've been doing with a lot of roof replacements in town. And in terms of process, I think it's something that should be considered if we're going to be talking about roofs, or at least the BET should understand what could be done to reduce the energy costs for the building. And then just related to that, but in terms of ed specs, so we think about Riverside, I think this isn't really a question, it's more of a comment, where we could use this building committee's knowledge that's been garnered to pass along to, say, the Riverside Building Committee or other building committees about getting the ed specs designed early on to take these considerations into account, rather than dealing with these types of questions on the back end of a project. So I would just ask the chair of the building committee, and I know the answer is going to be yes to this, but to take the knowledge that's been gained through the work that you've done quite exceptionally over a long period of time, and then to make sure there's a mechanism to pass that along both to future building committees, but also to other interested bodies, to make sure we're learning from what you guys have all been through to improve the building committee processes and reduce costs for construction and more efficiency in the future.
Yes. No, the one thing I would just say is, I mean, the superintendent's already shared some of our lessons learned with the Riverside, building committee members. We're going to continue to add stuff like that. The one thing I would just say to some of these comments, prior is, look, this project for Old Greenwich School, it does not touch the building envelope, right? So, we had Peter Schweinfurth, that was a frequent attendee of our meetings, certainly early on, and inquired about some of that. And the reality is, that is not a feature of the ed spec, right? That the solar is not a feature of the ed spec. Adjusting the thermal boundary of the building is not a feature of the ed spec. Replacing the windows, all of the windows, is not a feature of the ed spec. Never has been. Just want to make sure everybody is aware of that.
Stephen?
As James said, Peter Schweinfurth was on our committee and consistently advocated for that. And what I remember, one of the things that Peter said is that, in terms of efficiency of the building, the most important thing that was not being done, in his words, we're really looking at the envelope of the building. And he said that, if we had, now that's a big ticket item, and I don't want to minimize that, but he said that's the single thing that would have been done to really enhance the long-term utility of the building. Yeah. I'm sorry if I was not clear. Peter Schweinfurth, who sat ex officio on the committee from EMAC, when we were talking about early in the project, one of the things he said to us was, if you really wanted to make the building have a greater durability, if you will, he said, look at the envelope of the building. Look at the curtain wall and look at whether you can improve the efficiency of the building. And he was, I'll say it I don't want to castigate Peter, but he was disappointed that that was not part of the ed specs. But that was the one point that he made really repeatedly when we were talking about scope of the project 3 years ago.
Can I say more? Yeah. So one thing I would just say is like, all these are, certainly things that could be explored in an ed spec. At this point in the game, where a project's been taken out to bid and you're ready to start in 3 months, they're not things we can easily add to the project. You're talking about years of additional delay to do that now.
Sally?
Great. First, thanks, James. I know you and I have talked a couple times about the project. My daughter had gone to school there, so I know the building well. The one thing that kind of caught my eye, and you said this, and this was your quote, no massive FF&E in the project. But I understand the new space being built, which is currently the playground, as you mentioned. Am I right? Yep, okay. I want to make sure I had that right. Where there might be some, not contaminated, but some other soil. But won't we need to finish out those buildings? I'm surprised there isn't more FF&E, because won't we need FF&E for the new building, because we're also going to keep the old building?
Yeah, that's correct. There is an FF&E line item for $168,000
That's-
for the new build.
Oh,
for the-
that's it. That's
For
all
the
you
new
need.
facility. Yep.
Okay, thanks, you answered my question.
All right, anyone else? Doug had a question, then I'm going to recognize Harry.
Just coming back to the 6.277 million, what amount of that, based on kind of conversations we've already had with the state, do we expect to be ultimately reimbursed?
So the approved, Ryan, you should maybe, and I think the superintendent is tracking on this too, the approved state reimbursement for the project to date is $9.6 million. Ryan, is that more or less correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Now, there is a whole process whereby we need to go back to the state and with the results of our bid process, and, that number will then get adjusted. To be, it's roughly 20% of the project. I should note also for this board's benefit that one of the things that we are actively exploring in partnership with our state reps is some recent legislation that was passed that we believe may have help us in terms of additional state reimbursement, specifically related to the presence of the pre-K programs that Old Greenwich School currently has and will continue to have after the renovation. Too early to say, but this is something that we are actively working on, and I only flag it because it's actually potentially a meaningful amount.
So just to follow up on that, so would you expect of this incremental amount, I understand give and take, but like roughly 20% would come through on that?
It's roughly an extra 15%. So if we have 20% now, 9.6 ballpark, and potentially an additional 15 that we're working. We heard we missed, our application was 6 days prior to the deadline, the window opening, and our state reps think that is, should be addressed.
Sorry, I'm not sure if these are two separate things. That's a 15% across the entire budget?
On top of, exactly.
The 20%. And then putting that aside, on the core project that we got approved, the 9.6, is the 9.6 a cap, or does that grow as a percentage?
It'll adjust based on the GMP, right?
Yeah, it's based on ineligible and eligible expenses in the GMP. And the contingencies become eligible once they are proven to be validated expenses in terms of eligible.
And just to clarify that point, you don't just have one bite at the apple, right? You can continuously go back as things change, or you use contingency, or do you need to, how often do you update your state reimbursement request?
There's a very regimental process and a utilization of contingency for change orders that become eligible. We obviously have extensive amount of experience with that, doing school construction throughout the state. There's a 6-month rule, but we'll be working closely with your OPM to ensure that that as we move forward with changes to the contingency, which is what is really predominantly ineligible right now, that we are in compliance with that so that you're maximum on reimbursement.
Thank you. Harry?
Yeah, just in the interest of transparency, after the budget or the building committee meeting this morning, I had the idea in regard to the contingency that, which, just for clarity, the budget committee does not have the increase before us today. It has to go through the Board of Ed first. But if it comes to the BET that one possible proposal, and Laura and I discussed this, is to have a condition on the extra 3%, so that the building committee would have to come before us to get that released based on progress and conditions, how things have gone. So I just wanted to put that out on the table for everybody's interest. Thank you.
So I'm going to just take this opportunity to level set where we sort of directionally are headed, and I will recognize you in a minute, Leslie. So this interim appropriation of 6277940 is before us. We all have heard and recognize and appreciate the building committee's thoughtful deliberations and vote on the contingency. We know that the Board of Ed took up this item just last week. I think it was just last week. And there was discussion about the roof and the cornice, and we do all this work, and 4 years later, we want it to look nice. And we don't want people who have been through a construction project to have to continue to go through more work if it's much more efficient, and we all agree it probably is to do it at a price that we know. That said, the four of us as the Budget Committee, we don't want to get too far ahead of the Board of Ed on this, given that they've raised those questions in their last meeting, and there is a meeting, a scheduled Board of Ed meeting on Thursday night. So I think the way directionally we're headed, and I appreciate Harry's discussion about the additional 3% contingency. You'll see on our agenda, we do have a release of condition for the 1.9 million, which was subject to release based on showing a minimum of 7% contingency, and we are there. But I think what we'd like to suggest is that with the building committee vote and a potential Board of Ed discussion and vote, we don't have any say on whether or not they put it on their agenda, but with their direction, and I think they're the ones properly to say, we know we have capital items, we haven't talked about the windows, which may come down the road, but if we really think we should do the roof, and we really think we want to do the cornices, I think that direction needs to come from the Board of Ed. All of us have opinions and ideas, but at the same time, you've got enough on your plate with the scope of work you've been given. And I know you'll gladly do what you're asked to do, but I think the direction needs to come from the Board of Ed members and with the recommendation of the administration, which I appreciate Dan being very, very forthright about that recommendation. So my suggestion would be that we vote on the item as before us, and then we recommend that the BET, we potentially would make a motion, or someone from the BET would make a motion on Tuesday at our regular meeting based on the outcome of the Board of Ed meeting to add the increment for the 3% in addition contingency, which would, I think, come with a condition that we could all get behind. I think that makes sense. We'd release it subject to a report on how the contingency is being used, and you're going to give us regular updates anyway, I'm sure. I don't think that's going to be too onerous. And then we'll see what the Board of Ed discussion is about the roofs and the cornices, to be honest. I mean, we're not the experts. I think that the people who have the care and custody of the buildings really should have that discussion. Does that comport with what we sort of talked about? Yeah. Okay. With that, Leslie Tarkington?
Yes, I just wanted to come back to the question about the state grant reimbursement. So the state grant now has been approved, and at least in the past, there was only the opportunity for one amendment. So the question is, does this increase count as that one amendment? And in the end, your colleague was talking about accumulating these items. Will they then come at the end in terms of the total reimbursement? And what is the retainage on all of it in today's environment?
Brian, do you want to take a stab at that one?
Bless you. Sorry.
Sure. So you're right, that we do have one revision. However, they do allow for, us to submit a draft, which is what we've done to date. So we have not submitted any final, changes to the project. We did submit a draft to keep them up to date. And we will have to do that, based on the decisions that are made. However, when it comes to contingencies and changes throughout the project, that's an ongoing process. This is just related to the total project cost and the budget that gets approved. However, it doesn't have an effect on the state change order process throughout the job. Does that make sense?
No.
So
I
Leslie,
I just wanted to understand, when you make those change orders, because they've already agreed to certain numbers by, category, are those collected at the end? Do you still have that one opportunity for the reimbursement of the grant?
I think, Ryan, maybe, let me try and put in layman's terms, and you can tell me what's wrong. So we have submitted our application. The state has signed off on our pre-bid conformance review. That was before we were allowed to go out to bid. They have also approved everything else required up to this point. We do have one chance to go back with our revised numbers, which we will do once we have the sort of funds to move forward with the project, so i.e. after this process. That would be our change. Then we would go down the change order process as construction continues and contingencies become expended or not expended. As there are change orders that happen through the process, that is just a regular, ordinary course of the state's process, but does not count for the one change that you're alluding to.
So this also is about strategy. If you're fully confident in all your numbers, maybe this is the time to do it. Or if you're, we're hearing a lot of things here, or things could happen, are you better waiting until later in the process? But anyway, this is just something that you can consider for the future, or get back to me offline at this point in time.
Our revision is for the GMP,
Yeah.
the reimbursable cost of the GMP, and then on a monthly basis, when you use your contingencies, you do your monthly change order.
Yeah, so the one thing I would just say is it's not really about strategy. What the state has approved so far is our construction estimate, right, prior to going out to bid. When we go, now we have to go back, once we have the funding to move forward on the project, that will constitute our change, right? We don't get a choice in the matter if we want to access the reimbursement, because they want to know what happened in the bid process, what are the details. Then that will start the ordinary course monthly process, where we'll be in touch with the state as, hey, we made this change order, we made that change order, and to make sure that the things that we are doing are deemed eligible. Does that make sense?
Thank you for the clarification. Are there any other questions? All right, so we have, the item has been moved and seconded. I don't believe we have any motions to amend or to increase at this time, although we have signaled the direction we're headed based on, hopefully the Board of Ed will take this up and give us some guidance. And the full BET meets next Tuesday, and we may well have an amendment or a change. Somebody on the committee will at that point in time. Are we ready to vote? All those in favor, let me just restate the motion. It is to, let's see, what is the motion? It's just to provide an interim, BOE 5 to provide an additional appropriation for the Old Greenwich renovation project in the amount of $6,277,940. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 4-0, that's unanimous.
First important vote.
Don't go away quite yet. I think the next item will be brief. But in connection with this, there was a condition placed on a prior interim appropriation of $1,965,000. And the condition was, it was subject to release based on showing that there's a 7% contingency. Harry, can I have a motion for this item?
Now, I move
Mr. Fenton seconds, okay. Any discussion on this? All those in favor? 4-0. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
I appreciate the team coming in person and on Zoom. Thank you very much. In just 1 second, we'll let the room clear, and then we'll invite Jim, Michael, and Gabriella to come up to the front. All right, we have Jim Michael, the Commissioner of Public Works, and Gabriella Sarcosta-Cohey, Deputy Commissioner. Harry, would you like to make a motion?
I move PW3, the North Street Bridge Rehabilitation Additional Appropriation to come before us.
Is there a second?
A second.
Joe Kelly, second. All right, you want to give us an overview? Thank you.
All right, so the North Street Bridge is a project that we're working on. We've gone out to bid in December. Bids came back a little higher than we were expecting or were hoping for, but part of that is due to a couple reasons. Number one, we made some changes about a year ago to make improvements to the time of the project, meaning we were initially going to do a phased construction where we would have an alternating signal allowing traffic to continue across North Street. However, our new proposal, which we've discussed with the BET in the past and so forth, but I know some of you, most of this group here is newer than the last time we were before you on this item, except for one of them. So, so we've made changes to that to make it so that we're going to completely close North Street down. And we delayed the project a year to make sure that we had everything in order to be able to send it out to bid and get bids back, get contractors ready to go. And that's one of the main reasons. In addition, there's some additional things that in doing the closure that we had to add to the cost of the project. And so that's where we're at here. In addition, the last piece that we did is we did increase our construction contingency from 10 to 15%, just because we know that this project is going to be going on over the summer months, and that we know that it has a very short closure period, and in the event that we uncover something during that project, we don't want to have a delay that would then cause the project to have an extended schedule for that closure. So we want to make sure that we have the ability to authorize that and not have to have any special meetings or so forth. So that's the bulk of it. So we're asking for 1.06 million on this. The questions come up a few times about the grant. So this is a project that is grant funded. This 1.061 will bring the total to 4.760 and change. So, so of that 4.76, basically 4.2 of it is 4.26 of it is going to be grant funded. So, so we're getting all but about 500,000 of that. Some of that 500 is what they call non-participating items. For we are doing an incentive for the contractor in the event that they finish earlier or open the road earlier. I keep saying finish, but I want to make sure it's clear. Open the road earlier. By up to 10 days, they can get up to a $200,000 increase. So if they get it open in 9 days, it's 180,000, and it just scales down from there. If they go over the end date, it's a $40,000 per day penalty that they get incurred. So there is a incentive to get done on time as well in that regard. So, so we've put that in there. That 200,000 is not a participating item that the state will refund or reimburse for us in the grant, and then some of our contingencies and a couple other items such as some utility work that needs to get done as well. So that's the bulk of it, but this is a grant through what's called the LOTSIP program, the Local Transportation Capital Improvement Program. Those funds are a nice program for us and finance, because we get the funds up front once we get the authorization to award to the contractor. So once that goes through, then they start processing it. We generally see a check within a month or so after that happens. So we might be seeing it up to the 4.2 in hopefully in March timeframe, and then that goes into the account. We work kind of off of that as well during the process. In the event that we eliminate some items from the contract and we don't end up spending the full 4.2, we do have to reimburse the state back for it, but we haven't spent it, so we should still have it to do that. So it's a pretty good program. They pay 10% for contingencies, and they pay 10% for incidentals, which incidentals are construction inspection and services, or engineering services during construction. So those services are also included in this cost. So.
Thank you. Any questions? Harry?
Yeah, I know this question's been put to you, so have you thought more about if the need to dip into the contingency and that changes scheduling, how does that affect the incentive? And maybe there's no good answer to it, but I don't know what the language is in the contract about the incentive.
So the language in the contract is strictly that I don't have the exact contract right in front of me, but if they finish on, let's say it has a specific date, like August 31st or whatever that date is. The incentive specifically says if they finish by August 21st, they get the full incentive, and then it's $10,000 or $20,000 per day up to August 31st, deducted from that $200,000. So regardless, if they finish in that timeframe window or before that window, or reopen the road during that window, they get the incentive. The contingencies, the way we work contingencies, and we do this on every bridge project, contingencies are not built into the contract. They're not part of the contract. They are extras, change orders that if we uncover things between our town staff, our engineering consultant that we have on hand will review the request from the contractor and determine whether it's a reasonable request or something that wasn't foreseen as part of the bid project. And then that's when we would issue a change order, and that's where the contingency piece comes in. It's not a set amount that the contractor gets regardless of what they end up with. Basically, if you look at our bid tabulation, there's close to 100 items that this bridge has done. We measure all those items during the construction phase, and they get paid by how much they install for those items. So if if for some reason we want to move a catch basin 5 feet over one way or the other, it may cause us to have 5 more feet or 5 less feet of pipe that we need to get to because of that. And so we'll pay for whatever that length of pipe that we put in the ground is, not necessarily what was shown on the plans, but we do all that in the field. So that's how we handle our contingencies and our
Okay, thank you.
construction management.
Appreciate it.
I just want to make a comment that, originally this was in the CIP for 2024. And there were some conditions, and I tried to put the trail in the packet so people could follow the history of the project. But as a reminder, this bridge was deemed to be in not great condition. During a storm event, there was some structural damage, there was an emergency repair. So I'm really happy that this project is moving along, and I think the incentive in particular is a very creative approach. It's a very busy section down at the lower end of North Street. I believe it's North Street and Cotswood. There's a lot of schools there, there's a lot of neighborhood traffic, a lot of traffic coming from the Merritt to downtown, the business district. So, I hope this goes well. And if it does, I think it's a very interesting way to approach some of these construction projects. I know, Gabriella, last night at Public Works, you said this is your, I can't remember, 10th or 15th bridge, and none of them have been the same. And this is the first time we've tried this approach. So I applaud you for trying something new. Any other comments? We ready to vote? All those in favor?
Aye.
4-0. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. And can I make a plea to either David or you guys that either this be routine or that it get moved a little higher on the agenda, because it is on the RTM meeting later that night, on the same night as your meeting on that Tuesday. So as long as I have an answer by 8 o'clock on which way the overall RTM votes on, or the overall BET votes on this, so I can report it when it gets to the RTM
Absolutely.
meeting.
Harry, do you have any thoughts as the,
Well, I think it's up to David to set the agenda for the Tuesday meeting, but maybe you could put this right after the assessor's report, so there's no concern about timing, that he can carry the message to the RTM.
Yeah, we have this, we also, Jamie.
No, because the Old Greenwich is not on the RTM agenda.
No, but he has to be in the RTM.
The budget oversight.
Oh, yeah, I should think we get it through everything.
we
by 8
will
o'clock.
circle back to you on the agenda, but we appreciate that we have dueling meetings on the same evening.
We appreciate you guys accommodating us to make sure that this was going to happen this way, so that we could get on the RTM meeting. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Their vote is sort of contingent on our vote.
Jim gets that.
All right, the next item on the agenda, Harry, would you like to move it?
This is FL4, the bonding resolution for the Old Greenwich expansion renovation project. I move that to have it for us.
Second?
Joan, do you have any comments? This bonding resolution was worked out with Robinson and Cole. It is very familiar language.
Actually, it's the exact same language as the 3 million original bonding resolution and the 700,000. The only comment that I would make is the question was asked a couple of times.
Sorry, we're talking about Old Greenwich, not North Street.
Okay, sorry, no comment on Old Greenwich.
Any discussion? All those in favor of the item?
Aye.
4-0.
Yes.
Harry, move the next item, please.
Yeah, I move FI5, Finance Department bonding resolution for the North Street Bridge rehabilitation.
All right, Joan, now you can.
Sorry, second.
Apologies.
It's all right.
Excuse me.
As I was saying, the initial, the question came up, why do we need a bonding resolution if the majority of this project is covered by a state grant? And we've discussed, but I just wanted to formally discuss and let you know. The original project is set up in the bond fund for 3 million, and then the 700,000 as well. So we currently have bonding resolutions approved for the 3.7. We want to keep the project, we're basically, this appropriation is going to the same project, so we are getting the authorization through this resolution, but we will not be borrowing on using up most of this authorization. We will only borrow the net amount. So bond counsel recommends that if you don't have the money in the bank, you should get the resolution to authorize the full amount, and then we will deauthorize after the project is complete for a good portion of this.
Thank you. Okay, can I have a vote? You ready to vote? All those in favor? Aye, 4-0. Thank you. All right, for the benefit of anyone listening on Greenwich Community Television, we have moved the executive session to the end of our agenda. We do not expect any votes to take place in executive session, and after we exit, we will just be adjourning. So just a couple more things to get through under new business. We sent out to departments a very brief memo with just a framework of what to expect during the budget hearings. I drafted it, I ran it by individually, the members of the Budget Committee, the Finance Committee had input. It's really nothing new, it's just sort of laying out, come prepared. We've asked that you don't need to bring a lot of paper unless it's really hard to read, you can provide it electronically. We're going to try and be disciplined and route all our questions and everything through Agnes. So we make sure all the information is shared amongst all of the BET Budget Committee and all of the BET members. So that was something that went out to department heads. And attached to it is a budget hearing calendar, which is in draft form, so I am looking for input. We obviously haven't seen the budget. We won't see the budget until the first selectman presents it on January 27th at 6 p.m. As of now, Agnes put together this calendar. There are some departments that are not scheduled, but we certainly can ask any department and come. We've built in some flexibility and some time and a snow day if we need it. But for instance, the Department of Health is not scheduled to be seen. The Senior Center Commission on Aging is not scheduled to be seen. The libraries are not scheduled to be seen. If once we see the budget, or if there's anything in particular that people are interested in talking to those departments about, we can certainly add them to the schedule. Or if it's not budget related, as we go on through the year, and we want them to come just to tell us about what they're doing and what they're up to in the context of a regular budget meeting, we can do that too. So I just wanted to put that out there. I don't know if anyone has any thoughts or comments on the calendar as it's presented. I appreciate all of you we rescheduled some dates, so we are not meeting the week of Greenwich Public School break, which historically we had done, so that was a big change, but I think we managed to fit it all in. So any thoughts or comments?
No, I appreciate you delineating which departments are not there because it's hard to tell what's missing.
I might not have them all. Purchasing is not there either. I know.
Oh, okay.
But we can go through that in more detail, and maybe that's a good exercise to say, this is what's here,
Yeah,
but here's what's not here, just so you know.
right. The only one, Department of Health has traditionally come before us, but, it's also one of the more disciplined departments, but, I'm fine with the schedule as is till we see the budget.
Excellent. There is no old business. On the chair report, I just wanted to briefly talk about logistics for the public hearing. The first selectman and the BOE will present their budget to the public on Tuesday, January 27th, after which at 7 o'clock is a public hearing conducted by this body. As in the past, we encourage people to come in person and share their thoughts and comments. We will limit speakers to 2 minutes. We are going to provide a Zoom option for people who are unable to be here in person, but we would ask, much like the RTM does, is that any speakers who plan to speak on Zoom sign up by noon the day before. And Leo is still working out the logistics, and we will have those figured out, and we will let the public know how to access that. As in years past, we also will have a link to provide an email, which would be included as part of the minutes to the public hearing. I think there's typically been a form, and we accept comments to midnight of that night of the public hearing. So we expect to continue that practice. Any thoughts or comments on that? I'll just reiterate for the public, 2 minutes. And if you can't fit it in 2 minutes, you can email us. And, we will emphasize that at the public hearing as well. In terms of agenda planning and going forward, I welcome thoughts and suggestions about populating our agendas. This tends to be a reactive budget committee because we get things from departments, but there are also things we can do proactively. One of the things that the finance department has talked about is the report, which is known as the Economic Conditions Report. We typically get that every month, but it's not necessarily, we don't always have, because of timing, the books aren't closed, so it's maybe not as useful in some months. So next month, in February, expect to see a 6-month fiscal year-to-date report, actual versus budget, and other pertinent things. So expect that on the agenda next month, in addition to the regular business. But if you have any thoughts, I know we have some things that periodically come up. Nathaniel Witherall is working on a strategic plan, and outside of the budget process, we probably will be asking Nathaniel Witherall to come and talk about their plans. TAG periodically comes up. So those types of issues, we can always put them on the agenda, and I welcome that.
Sounds good.
All right, with that, can I have a motion to go into executive session?
So moved, move into executive session for Costas versus the town of Greenwich.
Second.
All right, so 3:01, we are entering into executive
All vote.
session. All those in
Aye.
favor?
Aye.
Aye. And then again, when we come out, we will only be making a motion to adjourn.